mobilize the masses to know that apart from going to court, you can have a protest against the government because of failure to implement what is provided in the Constitution. Can also be made to the Constitution to bring in some, not all, some of the provisions of Chapter 2 into the provision.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I think you can go ahead, ma'am, or do you want to sit here? You'll stand as well. Okay.
I'll be talking about sustaining human rights. There was the collapse of the per capita production in the 1980s and 1990s. It was revitalized in around 2014, and shortly after the collapse happened again. So it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, and this counterbalance of progresses slowed down the pace of the economic development. So the SDGs were adopted to eradicate extreme poverty, reduce inequality, promote peace and security, protect the planet, and to ensure peace and security by 2030. And this was to be achieved by addressing issues such as fluctuation of food and energy prices, slow pace of reforms in some African countries, environmental degradation, global warming, shortage of resources in the face of unabated population growth. I'd like to touch some challenges to Africa's economic development. One of them is unemployment. Unemployment is a challenge because the unemployed spend less, they accrue more debt, and therefore they are a burden on the government. Statistics have it that about 44.4% of the labor force in South Africa in 2021 was unemployed, and that was the highest in that year. Unemployment has been held as a human rights concern because most times the roots are traced to human rights violations. For example, gender inequality. In Nigeria, for example, in relation to some jobs, women they find it more difficult to get employed than men, and when they are offered less pay. Same with men on some jobs. So these unequal values attached to men and women's efforts, ambitions, and achievements lead to inequality and injustice, which is a human rights issue. Another challenge is poverty. You'll all agree with me, because no meaningful progress can be made when a large percentage of the population lives in penury. So it is also, like unemployment, a human rights concern because it is traced to various forms of violation of rights. In many countries in Africa, the rate of poverty, the level of poverty is still alarming. Other challenges include corruption, inadequate basic skilled manpower, lack of access to loans, high interest rates, and all these are directly or indirectly linked to human rights violations. This tells us that human rights violations must stop. It has to be dealt with. I like to define the direction in my paper using 2 theories which explain the effect of human rights, the effect of human rights violations on the human personality and, by extension, on economic development. The first is the Marxist theory, propounded by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. It talks about the polarization of the society into class structures, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, oppression of the masses, the resources of the society residing in the hands of this ruling class, and bringing it down to the society we are in today. The rule of law, most of the time, is not followed by the ruling class. Most of the time, when maybe the proletariats, now those that represent that class, when they offend or violate the law, they are made to face the wrath of the law. But the ruling class are let off the hook at one point or the other. The second theory is the psychoanalysis theory, propounded by Sigmund Freud, and it explains how the scenario painted by in the Karl Marx's theory affects the sufferer. The theory divides the human personality into three: the conscious, which is the aspect that is in direct contact with the exterior, like information not in the conscious but are easily recalled, like your name, your address. But if the third aspect is the unconscious, and this is the aspect that dictates our actions and inactions without us thinking about it. In respect to this paper, the focus is on the unconscious. The argument of the propounders of this theory is that there are some experiences, of course, that they start with in the conscious, but are repressed into the unconscious and inadvertently affect how we behave. So human rights violations start in the conscious, then repressed into the unconscious, and affect how many people react. And most of the time, it's not in the interest of the society. That's why many times some people resort to activities that affect the economy of the country. We have examples of cyber crimes. In Nigeria, we talk about Yahoo, things like that. And looking at the effect of this scenario, according to the proponent, they say that the reaction is a dysfunctional one, and they describe it as a maladaptive coping behavior. Now, what are the effects of this reaction on the society? People agitate for change, protests leading to loss of lives and property, crimes everywhere, and most importantly, which is the effect of this first two, reduced foreign direct investments. No foreign investor will want to come to a society where there is no assurance of stability or predictability of political conditions. So that affects the economy. In law, we know that violations are met with sanctions. We know that there is no good reason for violating the law. So when these things happen, when crimes are committed, irrespective of the cause, laws are followed, the offenders are made to face the wrath of the law. But in respect to this, a crime that the root is in the unconscious, this approach is superficial. So that tells us that there should be another approach to correct that. I believe that since the problem is in the unconscious, the approach to solving it should be designed accordingly. I have a question which is actually at the tail of the paper, and I ask that what are the practical approaches to correcting maladaptive behavior linked to human rights violation? I believe that will be the next step in, after this paper. So my conclusion is, while we work on establishing social structures and organizations to promote and